Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my other socials for more. Enjoy. As the group continued to grow and make a positive impact in the community, Corey found herself being invited to speak at schools, community organizations, and even a regional LGBTQ+ conference. She embraced each opportunity, seeing it as a chance to spread understanding and acceptance further. One day, as Corey was preparing for a presentation at a local high school, she received an unexpected email. It was from her father, whom she hadn't heard from in decades. With trembling hands, Corey opened the message.
Dear Corey, I hope this email finds you well. I recently came across an article about the work you're doing with your support group, and I wanted to reach out. I know I have no right to contact you after all these years, but I wanted you to know how proud I am of the woman you've become. I made many mistakes in my life, and leaving you and your mother was the biggest one. I've carried that regret with me every day. I understand if you don't want to hear from me, but if you're open to it, I would love the chance to apologize in person and to get to know the amazing person you are now. With love and admiration, Dad. Corey sat back in her chair, a whirlwind of emotions coursing through her. She had long ago come to terms with her father's absence, but seeing his words on the screen brought back a flood of memories and feelings she thought she had put behind her. After taking some time to process, Corey decided to share the email with her mother and aunt. They listened supportively as she read it aloud, then waited patiently as she sorted through her thoughts. "What do you think I should do?" Corey asked, looking between the two women who had been her rocks for so long. Her mother reached out and took her hand. "Sweetheart, this is entirely your decision. Your father made his choices and you don't owe him anything. But if you feel like meeting with him would bring you some closure or peace, then we'll support you completely." Her aunt nodded in agreement. "And if you decide not to respond, that's okay too. You've built a beautiful life without him, and you should do whatever feels right for you." Corey mulled over the decision for several days, weighing the potential benefits and risks of reconnecting with her father. In the end, she decided to take a leap of faith. She replied to her father's email, agreeing to meet him for coffee at a neutral location. As the day of the meeting approached, Corey found herself growing increasingly nervous. What would she say to the man who had been absent for most of her life? How would he react to seeing her in person? On the day of the meeting, Corey arrived at the coffee shop early, her stomach in knots. She chose a table near the back where they could have some privacy. As she waited, she fiddled with her necklace, a nervous habit she'd had since childhood. When her father walked in, Corey's breath caught in her throat. He was older, of course, his hair now gray and his face lined with wrinkles, but she could still see echoes of the man she remembered from her early childhood. He approached the table hesitantly, a mix of emotions playing across his face. "Corey?" he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. Corey stood, smoothing down her skirt. "Hi, Dad," she replied, surprised at how steady her voice sounded. For a moment, they stood there awkwardly, neither sure how to proceed. Then, to Corey's surprise, her father stepped forward and enveloped her in a gentle hug. "You're so beautiful," he whispered, his voice choked with tears. "I'm so sorry for everything." As they sat down and began to talk, the years of separation seemed to melt away. Her father listened intently as Corey shared her journey, asking thoughtful questions and expressing genuine interest in her life and work. "I want you to know," he said at one point, reaching across the table to take her hand, "that I don't have any excuses for leaving. It was the biggest mistake of my life. But seeing the amazing woman you've become, the important work you're doing, I couldn't be prouder to call you my daughter." Tears welled up in Corey's eyes at his words. She had spent so many years wondering if her father's departure had been because of her, if he would have stayed if she had been the son he expected. Hearing him express his pride and acceptance was more healing than she had anticipated. As they parted ways that day, Corey felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She didn't know what the future held for her relationship with her father, but she was open to exploring it,
one step at a time. In the weeks that followed, Corey found herself rejuvenated, approaching her work with even more passion and dedication. She channeled the emotions from reconnecting with her father into her support group, using her experiences to help others navigate complex family dynamics. The group continued to grow and evolve, touching more lives with each passing month. Corey watched with pride as members of her group went on to become advocates in their own right, speaking at school board meetings, organizing community events, and providing peer support to others. One particularly rewarding development came when a local hospital reached out to Corey about collaborating on a program to provide comprehensive health care for transgender individuals. Corey threw herself into the project, working alongside medical professionals to create a holistic approach that addressed both physical and mental health needs. As the program took shape, Corey couldn't help but think about her own experiences navigating the healthcare system as a trans woman. She remembered the frustration of trying to find doctors who understood her needs, the fear of discrimination, and the struggle to access appropriate care. Now, she was helping to create a system that would make that journey easier for others. It felt like coming full circle, using the challenges she had faced to pave the way for a smoother path for those who would come after her. The day the new healthcare program launched was one of the proudest moments of Corey's life. As she stood at the podium, addressing a room full of medical professionals, community leaders, and members of her support group, she felt a profound sense of accomplishment. "This program," she said, her voice strong and clear, "represents more than just medical care. It represents acceptance, understanding, and the recognition that every individual deserves to live as their authentic self. It represents hope." As she finished her speech to thunderous applause, Corey caught sight of her mother and aunt in the audience, their faces beaming with pride. And there, sitting next to them, was her father, his eyes shining with tears of joy and admiration. In that moment, surrounded by the family that had supported her, the community she had built, and the positive change she had helped create, Corey felt a sense of completeness she had never experienced before. She thought back to that scared little boy she had once been, secretly trying on dresses and dreaming of a life that seemed impossible. She wished she could reach back through time and tell that child that not only would things get better, but that she would one day be in a position to make things better for others. As the event wound down and people began to filter out of the room, Corey found herself surrounded by well-wishers, colleagues, friends, and members of her support group. Each person had a story to share about how her work had touched their lives or the lives of their loved ones. One young trans man, his voice filled with emotion, told Corey, "You've created a world where people like me can dream of a future. Thank you for showing us what's possible." Later that evening, as Corey sat at dinner with her mother, aunt, and father, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. The journey hadn't always been easy, but every step, even the painful ones, had led her to this moment. Her mother raised her glass in a toast. "To Corey," she said, her voice filled with love and pride, "who has always had the courage to be herself and who has used that courage to change the world for the better." As they clinked glasses, Corey felt tears of joy prick her eyes. She'd come so far from that summer night 4 decades ago when she had been discovered in her mother's clothes. That moment of fear and uncertainty had been the first step on a path that had led her to a life filled with purpose, love, and the joy of living authentically. As she looked around the table at the faces of her loved ones, Corey knew that her journey was far from over. There would be new challenges to face, new battles to fight, and new lives to touch. But she was ready for whatever lay ahead, armed with the strength of her experiences and the unwavering support of those who loved her. In the years that followed, Corey continued to expand her work, touching more lives and breaking down barriers. She wrote a book about her experiences, which became a beacon of hope for many struggling with their gender identity. She was invited to speak at national conferences, sharing her story and advocating for greater understanding and acceptance. But no matter how far her influence spread, Corey never forgot where she came from. She continued to run her local support group, always making time for the individuals and families who came seeking guidance and understanding. She remembered the scared child she had once been and strived to be the supportive presence she had needed back then. As she entered her 60s, Corey began to think about her legacy. She established a foundation to ensure that her work would continue even after she was gone. The foundation would provide resources for trans youth, fund research into trans healthcare, and support initiatives promoting LGBTQ+ rights. One day, as Corey was working late in her office, she received an unexpected visitor. It was Michael, her high school boyfriend, whom she hadn't seen in years. He had heard about her work and wanted to reconnect. Over coffee, they reminisced about their teenage years and caught up on each other's lives. Michael, now a successful businessman, expressed his admiration for what Corey had accomplished.
You know,
he said, a thoughtful look in his eyes, I always knew you were special, Corey, but seeing all that you've done, all the lives you've touched, it's truly remarkable. Corey smiled, touched by his words. I couldn't have done it without the support of people like you, she replied. Your acceptance back then meant more than you know. As they parted ways, promising to keep in touch, Corey felt a sense of completion. Her journey had come full circle, from a child struggling with her identity to a woman who had found her purpose in helping others on similar paths. That night, as Corey prepared for bed, she caught sight of herself in the mirror. The face that looked back at her was lined with age, her hair now more silver than brown, but her eyes still held the same determination and hope that had carried her through all these years. As dawn broke the next morning, Corey awoke feeling refreshed and invigorated. She had always been an early riser, and today was no exception. Slipping on her favorite silk robe, she padded downstairs to start her day with a cup of steaming coffee. The house was quiet, save for the gentle hum of the coffee maker and the distant chirping of birds outside. Corey savored these peaceful moments before the bustle of the day began. As she sipped her coffee, her eyes fell on a stack of letters on the kitchen counter. Responses to invitations she had sent out for an upcoming gala to raise funds for her foundation. Setting her mug down, Corey began to sort through the envelopes. Her fingers paused over one with a familiar return address. It was from her old high school. Curiosity piqued, she carefully opened it. Inside was a formal invitation. The school was celebrating its centennial anniversary and wanted Corey to be the keynote speaker at their alumni event. The letter praised her accomplishments and the positive impact she had made in the world. Corey's heart raced as she read the invitation. Memories of her high school years flooded back. The awkward moments, the small triumphs, the friendships that had sustained her. It had been a time of both struggle and growth, a crucible that had helped shape her into the woman she was today. The thought of returning to speak was both exciting and daunting. What would she say? How would it feel to walk those halls again, now as a successful and confident adult? As she pondered the invitation, Corey's phone chimed with a text message. It was from her assistant, reminding her of a meeting with the hospital board later that morning to discuss expanding their transgender health program. Corey glanced at the clock and realized she needed to start getting ready. She headed upstairs to her closet, carefully selecting a tailored navy pantsuit and a crisp white blouse. As she dressed, her mind continued to whirl with thoughts of the high school invitation. Perhaps, she mused as she applied her makeup, this could be an opportunity to come full circle, to show the students of her old school that it was possible to overcome adversity and live an authentic, fulfilling life. Corey finished her morning routine and gathered her materials for the hospital meeting. As she was about to leave, her eyes fell on a framed photo on her dresser. It was a picture of her as a teenager, standing with her mother and aunt at her high school graduation. Despite the smile on her face, Corey could see the uncertainty in her younger self's eyes. "Look how far we've come," she murmured to the photo, feeling a surge of gratitude for the journey that had brought her to this point. With a deep breath, Corey headed out the door, ready to face another day of making a difference. The high school invitation was still on her mind, but for now, she had other important work to do. The drive to the hospital was familiar, the route etched into her memory after countless visits over the past few years. As she navigated the morning traffic, Corey's thoughts drifted between the upcoming meeting and the unexpected invitation from her alma mater. Pulling into the hospital parking lot, Corey spotted Dr. Eleanor Reeves, the chief of staff and one of her strongest allies in developing the transgender health program. The two women had formed a close professional relationship and friendship over the years of working together. "Good morning, Corey," Dr. Reeves called out, her salt and pepper hair catching the morning sunlight. "Ready for the big pitch?" Corey nodded, falling into step beside the doctor as they walked towards the entrance. "As ready as I'll ever be. This expansion could make a real difference for so many people." As they made their way to the conference room, Corey filled Dr. Reeves in on the high school invitation. The doctor listened intently, her brow furrowing in thought. "You know, Doctor," Reeves said as they paused outside the conference room, "speaking at your old high school could be a powerful way to reach the next generation, to show them that there's hope, that they can thrive despite the challenges they might face." Corey nodded, touched by her friend's insight. "You're right. I think I needed to hear that. Thank you, Eleanor." With a shared smile of understanding, the two women entered the conference room, ready to present their proposal for expanding the transgender health program. The room was filled with board members, all turned expectantly towards Corey and Dr. Reeves as they took their places at the front. Corey took a deep breath, centering herself before she began to speak. This was what she had been working towards for years. A comprehensive health program that would address the unique needs of transgender individuals at every stage of life. As she launched into her presentation, Corey felt the familiar surge of passion that always accompanied her work. She spoke about the gaps in current healthcare provision, the mental and physical health disparities faced by the trans community, and the potential for this expanded program to save and improve countless lives. The board members listened attentively, occasionally jotting down notes or leaning in to whisper to one another. Corey could see a mix of expressions, some skeptical, others intrigued, and a few openly supportive. As she concluded her presentation, Corey felt a sense of accomplishment. She had said everything she needed to say, had poured her heart and expertise into making the case for this vital expansion. "Thank you, Miss Henderson," the board chairman said, his expression unreadable. "We'll need some time to discuss and deliberate. We'll be in touch with our decision within the week." As Corey and Dr. Reeves left the conference room, they exchanged hopeful glances. They had done all they could. Now it was a waiting game. "Lunch," Dr. Reeves suggested. "I think we've earned it after that presentation." Corey agreed, and soon they found themselves at a small cafe near the hospital, debriefing over salads and iced tea. "So," Dr. Reeves said, spearing a cherry tomato with her fork, "tell me more about this high school invitation. Are you going to accept?" Corey sighed, stirring her tea absently. "I think I will. You were right earlier. It could be a powerful opportunity to reach young people who might be struggling with their identity." Dr. Reeves nodded encouragingly. "I think it's a wonderful idea. And who knows, maybe your story will inspire the next generation of advocates and changemakers." As they continued their lunch, discussing the potential impact of both the hospital program and the high school speech, Corey felt a renewed sense of purpose. Each opportunity to share her story, to advocate for change, was a chance to create a more accepting and inclusive world. After saying goodbye to Dr. Reeves, Corey headed back to her office. She had a full afternoon ahead, meetings with her foundation staff, calls to return, and now a speech to start planning. As she settled at her desk, Corey pulled out a fresh notebook and began to jot down ideas for her high school address. What would she have wanted to hear as a teenager? What messages of hope and resilience could she share? The afternoon slipped away as Corey lost herself in memories and reflections, crafting the outline of a speech that she hoped would touch hearts and open minds. By the time she looked up from her work, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across her office. Gathering her things to head home, Corey felt a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. It had been a full day, filled with potential for positive change. As she locked up her office and headed to her car, she couldn't help but feel grateful for the path her life had taken. Every struggle, every triumph had led her to this moment where she could use her experiences to light the way for others. The drive home was quiet, the streets emptying as rush hour faded. Corey's mind wandered to the future, to the hospital board's pending decision, to the high school speech, to all the lives that might be touched by her work. As she pulled into her driveway, Corey noticed a figure sitting on her front porch. Her heart skipped a beat as she recognized her father, waiting patiently in the gathering twilight. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out my other socials if you want more wonderful content, early access, behind the scenes, and more. All links down below.